Hello everyone, Neodleen here and welcome back. Today we are doing, I am doing, a video that I have spent nearly a whole month preparing for. And one that I've wanted to do several times actually in the past, but I just did not have the ability to do it and display every single one of them in detail. But now I can, and with a lot of preparation, here it is. I'm ranking all 102 powers in the Edain mod. Now, for some of you who are a bit more astute and know the actual number of individual powers, you'll notice that I'm missing 8. That is because there are some powers that are just duplicates to the different factions. For example, Gondor and Arnor have quite a few powers that are the same. So the dwarves, Lothlorien actually has one power that is mixed with another faction. But anyway, putting all of them together, we have 102 unique powers. So powers that are completely different to one another in one way or another. Every power that is similar I have put together, and I will mention all of them together in each and every individual ranking. A lot of these positions I believe to be correct. I've put them into several different categories from powers I would recommend not touching at all until you've got no more powers to get, and some powers that are so good they actually make the Edain mod so enjoyable just by their existence. And it's not because they're overpowered, it's because they are fair but also really bloody good. Okay, I've done enough intro talk. I've now got a lot to go through and not a lot of time to do it in. And I'm going to hate doing the editing for this. Let's begin. Starting off at 102nd place, we have the Wizard's Tower, what I believe to be the worst power in the game, because everything it gives you is so minuscule and exists in so many other different ways that by the time you get this power, you don't even need all of this. And honestly, having all these abilities for Saruman from level 1, sure, it's a cool concept, but you can also just get Saruman to level 10 and then he'd still also have all of these abilities. And yeah, that is pretty much all I'm going to say about it. Bad power. Definitely what I believe to be the worst, and I imagine a lot of people will agree with me on this. It's a nice little aesthetic to the tower itself to make it look like Orthanc, but other than that, it needs something to make it feel right. In 101st, we have the Swords of Westernese, a power that I feel is not really in the right place either. It's a power that's existed since the dawn of Edain, and honestly, even back then, it had so little impact, because its main thing is fighting Mordor's Ringwraiths and Angmar's Barrow Wights. And other than that, we don't actually get a lot of information about it other than saying it protects against non-physical forms of damage, which, by the way, is 90% of every faction, so it's not that impactful. And it's a level 3 spell, which I think is the biggest reason I don't like it that very much. And I personally only really touch it as a joke, because every other power on Arnor's list is just far superior to this power. In the 100th spot, we have, back to Isengard, Saruman of Many Colours. A power that is actually weaker than Gandalf's version, by the fact it only gives 50% magic damage instead of 100% magic damage. And honestly, if you don't have Saruman, why would you want to get this power? If you don't have him, you don't spend the 4,000 for him, you're spending a bunch of power points to get a power you don't even get any value out of. And even with Saruman on the field, this is not going to save him from a lot of different enemies. Honestly, you can just avoid this power, get every other power first, and then get Saruman. Even though he's a good hero, don't get me wrong, love Saruman, but for just having a power that gives him a bunch of buffs, but not actually give your faction anything else, or even have an active counterpart, active inclusion to the power, it doesn't have enough value to make you gravitate towards this power. And at number 9, we have the counterpart, Gandalf the White. And again, another power that is exactly the same as Saruman of many colours. The only reason it's a little bit higher is because 1, it gives Gandalf a lovely glow up. Secondly, it affects his ring hero form, which the Challenge Master is far superior to the corrupted version, unless you enjoy seeing the corrupted version. And the power itself gives an extra 50% bonus to magic attacks, which, by the way, Gandalf's magic damage is already better than Saruman's in the form of his Starry Light and Word of Power, compared to Saruman's Fireball and Thunderbolt, not including his ring hero forms. It, again, is just another thing of just change up Isengard a bit and things can work. Gandalf is, unfortunately, another one of those heroes that even I play Gondor a lot. Unlike Isengard, I play Gondor a lot, and I just don't use him at all, unless I have the money for him, and normally I don't. At number 98, we have Blight, a power that I can't even actually show you the detail of because it requires me to target an enemy resource building, and I'm not having an enemy AI doing stuff in the background making the announcer go crazy. But basically, you target a resource building, and then it stops making as much resources, and any buildings nearby that are like touching it, so for example this Hall of the King's Men, could actually also suffer the effects of the Blight. So not only is this power affecting 1 building, but 2 buildings. And anyone that has played against Angmar knows this ability is stupidly powerful in that regard. And yeah, this is mainly a personal thing from me, but I hate this power. I don't think it's a good power. I think PvPers, if this power is abused, should be stopped. But yeah, a power that just negatively affects the enemy, but again in a PvE scenario, you're not going to want to use this because you're not going to get any value out of doing this, because reducing an enemy's resource generation does nothing. Doing it against the player will annoy them, but at the end of the day, as long as it's not affecting their research, it honestly is also just going to feel like it's doing nothing. And a power that feels like it's doing nothing is a power that can probably just get taken out and something better put in. For 97, I've chosen Devastation. Not because it's a bad power, but because of the fact that if you have no trees to take resources from, what are you going to do with the power? What if you're in the Mines of Moria? There's no trees in the Mines of Moria. Trees don't spawn in a mountain. That's not how it works. And honestly, the resources you get from Devastation, you can get better from other powers in your defensive tier roster. If Devastation had a duet spell for generating trees, and then you destroy them with Devastation, that would make it more valuable, instead of doing what patches in BFME 2 and the Age of the Ring team have done, which is make Devastation a paralyze effect in a large AoE, which I don't think it has any reason to have that ability. Having it generate resources is a good thing, but the fact it's reliant on a scenery piece that not every map has in abundance, and the amount of trees you destroy determines how much resources you get. You can understand why this is so low on the list, and could do with something to tune it up a bit. For 96, I have again chosen another Isengard power, Freezing Rain, which, on the face of it, removing enemy leaderships from the map might be a good thing, right? The problem is it's too situational again, because in reality, if you're not Gondor or Rohan, there's actually very few leaderships in the game. Mordor leadership effects are, and also another thing is it specifies units, not heroes. So Mordor's Nazgul leaderships are not affected. Negative leadership effects. For example, Dread Visage is not removed. So all you're doing is removing leadership effects from like Faramir, Boromir, Theoden, Éomer, Harmer. Basically, just affects Gondor and Rohan. If you're not against Gondor or Rohan, Lothlorien, you'd be stopping Galadriel in her light form, which is reliant on a power, which you could choose to not use while Freezing Rain is active. It's just a lot of things. It's just another situational power that doesn't provide enough for what you're getting. It's a tier 3 power that doesn't have a tier 3 power's amount of stuff to do with, unfortunately, in my opinion. At 95, we have the Cave Bats, the only scouting ability that actually has a health bar and can be killed, which is unfortunately a bit difficult to keep around when it can just be shot out of the air. It moves fast, but so does the Eye of Sauron. Its vision range is actually quite small, considering the fact that it is able to do all these things, and the fact it also reduces enemy armor. You might think it's a good thing, but honestly, with the goblins on the Misty Mountains, you've got all you're doing by reducing the armor is making it so mountain giants are still going to kill their enemy in one hit. Dragons are still going to kill their enemies in one hit. All your monsters are already going to do either 1 or 2 hits to kill an enemy, or your basic goblins are just going to take maybe 1 or 2 less hits, which they already attack really quickly, might I add, and move really quickly, thanks to all their other powers. That it's just a scouting ability that the goblins don't need, because the goblins can just dominate the map. They don't need vision because they have vision permanently over the entire map with all their other powers and abilities and just mechanics in general. It's unfortunately just a power that I don't want removed from the game. Maybe just give them a bit more vision. And I don't know. I don't know what can be done with this power to make it better. But in the Edain mod, with goblins as they are, they don't need a scouting tool. At number 94, we have the Druine Statue, and by extension, the Assault of the Druine ability that comes with the ability, which summons a small stone that, after a small amount of time, starts glowing, and you can summon some Druidine to protect it. Now, this is a nice little thing that they've done. The problem is, this used to be just a summon for some archers that shot poison damage. Which, for those of you who don't know, poison damage isn't that good in the first place. But the fact that you now have to actually make these stones, target the stone if it's going to get attacked, but in which point it could just be destroyed before that happens, because most things that are going to attack these stones are siege. Anything that isn't siege, you're just summoning some units to defend a stone, which can generate a decent amount of vision. I won't lie. The amount of vision we're getting here is quite good, so it's better than most scouting tools in pure range, except you actually need to have vision of the area you want to put the stone in the first place. If that wasn't a limiter, this could be a few steps higher on the ladder, but the fact that it has these limitations does make it weaker. Having more of them around means you can have the summon back faster, but that still isn't enough to put it in any other grade other than save it for the last power to get. At 93, we have the Revenge of the Horns. And yes, this is a tier 4 power that is honestly a bit just too weak in every category. It's a summon ability that summons a bunch of these Water in the Waterlight looking trees that just keep slapping things constantly for about a minute. Not even a minute, really. And while they exist, they're stopping enemies from really escaping or getting into this area, which is cool. But the biggest limitation of the power is it has to be used on an open area. If, for example, a building exists or a build plot exists in the area you're trying to summon this, then you can't use it. And then, how are you supposed to use it? How are you supposed to use a power that takes up a large area when so much of the map, unless you're playing on really large scale maps, is going to prevent you from using this power at a pivotal moment? With Lothlorien, you can view the entire map permanently, but if you don't have the space to use Vengeance of the Horns, then you can't use it. And this is meant to be one of your like game-changing powers, and it still annoys me that there's so many limitations to this power. I think if they remove the limitation for where it could be placed, so it could be placed anywhere, this could easily reach middle of this list. I'm not lying about that either. Remove the limitation on where it can be placed, middle of the list, right there. At number 92, we have Undermine, the last power I believe to be the bottom tier of all powers. And I'm a bit disappointed that I put this one so low in the end. Not because it's good or bad, but just because it's not needed. The dwarves already have their mine network, which they can build from settlements, which most maps can just do from anywhere. Unlike in BFME 2 with the free build system, you don't really have a massive need for Undermine. And also the fact all it does now is it just pops up out of the ground, and then that's it. Instead of knocking enemies away, breaking siege, or what Age of the Ring does, which is weaken enemy buildings around it, the Undermine just exists. It's just a thing that exists that can that can bring units out from the mine network, and then that's it. It's not bad in its regard. As I said already, it's not bad because in any regard, because in an emergency, you see an army of the dead come out of nowhere. Send your units in one bit by bit, and then you get them out again. Problem is, you have to do 5 units at a time, so a lot of them are going to disappear. But that is just how the mine network works in general. That's how they make it work in this mod. It's how it's been working for a long time. But yeah, it's a power that isn't as outdated as you'd think, but it certainly doesn't have the potential that it had during the free build system, where you could just spawn it at the back of a base and then just demolish that base instantly. In Edain, you don't do that, and I'm glad we don't do that, because this was a very dominant power in the free build system. At number 91, we have the formations of Gondor and Arnor. First power that actually intersects with several different factions. Now, this power is good, but it does require a bit of know-how to actually use, because if you don't select your units individually and then choose the separate formation, this power does nothing. If you keep them in their basic formation, you can see there's no glow on them. But you keep them in block formation, they move slower, they have more armor, and then they have an extra 20% damage and armor, respectively. This power has gone up a bit in respect because of the fact that the new elite, the new heroic unit for Gondor, the Fountain Guard unit, is permanently in a unique formation, meaning it is permanently getting the formations of Gondor buff. That is the one good thing that comes from this. It's not, again, like most things, it's not bad, but it does require you to put a lot of brain work into it, constantly going in and out of formations when you need them, because most of the formations you don't want to be using a lot of the time because it reduces your speed. And reducing your speed means that some units are going to go out further ahead of your main melee infantry, or in the case of your spearmen, your basic spearmen, your porcupine formation, which only works if you're standing still, so you don't have control over your attacks. I just don't always get to make this power work as much as I would like to, and that's why it's this far down here. I imagine people that are really good at microwing would probably put it a little bit higher because of how much of a value the 20% damage and armor is. At number 90, we have the Detachment from the Shire. A power that has actually been buffed recently in the fact that it now gets these 2 firework ballistae, which act pretty much the same as the catapults of Imladris in the fact they get to switch their ammunition, which unless you can read German, which I can't, it basically means that it gets a flash instead of the nice explosive you get there. And in fact, I can show it off by pressing the bombard here, for example. So you can see the difference between the flash and the basic explosive. And as nice as that is, on top of the archers that you get, the power lasts for a very short amount of time, and the damage it deals is honestly quite weak. And even though dealing a nice big golf swing against Golfimble, which unfortunately is not in this game, yeah, the power's already gone and I can't even finish talking about them. That's a shame. But yes, unfortunately the power doesn't last for anywhere near as long as it should. As a tier 3 power, it should last a little bit longer, and it's hobbits, so give them a little bit more, and then give them a little bit more time on the battlefield, and they'll feel right at home. At number 89, we have Cloudbreak, which has done what it's always done. It stuns all enemies that it sees, and it does good against trolls too. But the problem is, all it is a map-wide AoE stun, which for Rohan in particular, which is already a very fast, very powerful faction, doesn't need that small time AoE stun. And it also can get rid of Freezing Rain, which I guess is good for Rohan in particular. And also get rid of Darkness, which, unless you're playing as Mordor, you don't need. So it cancels 2 weather effects from two of many different factions to choose from. So you're not going to get that bonus effect used all the time. And personally, as soon as you start getting cavalry, Cloudbreak's usefulness in the fact it can stun enemies really starts to fall short. The best you're getting out of that is making it so your peasants can run away in a dangerous situation. And unfortunately, the power you need to get this power, I also don't personally recommend you get in the early stages of the game. At number 88, we have the Barrage for Gondor, which was originally their arrow volley, but in I believe the Siege rework, it actually came out 4.5. We got this little power, which, as you can see, is already starting to kind of move in a direction I did not ask for it to go to. I wanted it to destroy this troll lair. It did half the damage to the troll lair and then started moving elsewhere. Because in its text, it simply says deals small damage and targets the nearest enemy building. But as you can see, it's now pathing towards a completely different building. It did not know what building to go with. I don't know what the algorithm for Barrage is, but I think that in itself makes it that just not quite in the right spot. I don't know how the AI managed to make it work 90% of the time. But personally, when I see those first few boulders fall down and knock some of those small entity infantry around, I just start running away from it. And then it does no damage. And it normally doesn't do damage to buildings either, because they always focus units with Barrage most of the time. So even against AI, you don't see Barrage do a lot other than Zone, which honestly 90% of the time is good for you because they've normally got more units on the way. That way you're moving into a safer position to fight on your terms instead of theirs. At 87, we have Rogash and the Summon Hill Troll power, which you might think why I'm putting this so low when I love Rogash so much. The problem is the fact that Rogash alone is kind of the entire point of this power makes it a bit moot in the fact that it is meant to be showing these hill trolls off, which do honestly too little damage considering they were meant to be a tier 3 power. They don't last for very long. They do siege damage instead of water damage, which is one of the main things trolls are known for, is dealing water damage. And if all you're getting this out of this is the leap of Rogash to deal AoE damage, you've got other factions that have the same kind of effects, but do it even better. And also, I don't know why I hate this model so much. I just prefer the other Rogash model. and the power's gone. It's another thing like Detachment of the Shire. It doesn't last long enough. The fact it is a tier 3 power. I think tier 3 power summons should last a lot longer than tier 2 power summons. And in fact, we're about to go into a tier 2 power summon that lasts for about as long as Rogash. At 86, we have the Vanguard of Rohan, which is equivalent to a summon of a Rohirrim unit.
Men of Rohan.
And trampling with this unit reduces the attack and armor of enemies that are hit by them. Which, on paper, sure, sounds good. But how many cases are there going to be where you want to trample with these instead of trampling with your elite Rohirrim? Only in the very beginning of the game do you want to actually use this power, and they're already gone. And they're already gone, yes. So the only times you'd really use is if you're still using peasant spam. But in my experience with Rohan, you want to be going to get Theoden procured as soon as possible. I'm going to talk about that power a hell of a lot later. But yeah, the Vanguard are meant to be used as a very immediate attack, which most enemies can pretty much recover from anyway. And pikemen ruin this summon. They ruin it so hard. It's unbelievable. At 85, we have Aid from the Shire and the other Hobbit summon, this time for Imladris. You get to summon a total of 45 Hobbits, each of which boosts the damage of every other Hobbit, but only their melee damage. And then when fighting with rocks, they fight a little bit longer, they shoot a little bit longer, the more time you're able to shoot with them. But in both occasions, you're not getting the value that this unit should be able to get. This unit I typically only use if I need to get rid of a siege unit, when I've not got cavalry with Imladris, which is normally only at the very beginning of the game. They do give units in their vicinity immunity to fear, so you could have them, in theory, just stand next to some of these elves. But as you can see, that aura is very small. So you'd either have to have these exactly in the middle of your army, which means you're just getting a little bit more damage out of this power, or you're just using them as a meat shield to slowly die for you to save your troops. And in both occasions, I would not touch this power immediately with Imladris, just because they have got better options. And they don't, at this stage, they don't really need that extra cannon fodder support. You can get that cannon fodder support from your outpost. At 84, we have the Downfall of Andor. A bit disappointing that this power is so low down, but let me just show you what happens to these wildmen. One of them is still alive. These are the same type of hillmen you can get with Angmar. These are unupgraded Thrallmaster units that has no buffs, because it is a very different entity to that of the Thrallmasters in terms of ability. But it is still just an entity with a small amount of health, and it survived a tier 4 power. The building itself took no damage, which is fine, but the whole thing about the Downfall of Andor was that it flooded the entirety of Numenor. Maybe doing a bit more damage, disabled buildings would be a bit more impactful, considering this is your tier 4 power. It needs to have a bit more than just unit destruction to make it want to be used. You have got better powers in your list. And this is actually the aggressive power. And yeah, I've actually used this quite recently as Arnor, and I would not get this again. I would rather get other powers over the Downfall of Andor. At 83, we have the Blackguard Officers, a passive power that only boosts your Thrallmaster himself, making him a much tougher cookie to crack. So singling him out is not going to be necessarily the best thing to do. But the only other thing it does is give bonus health and damage to the unit that the Thrallmaster is protecting, which in theory is basically the same as giving them Forged Blades and heavy armor to a degree. but also able to make this slightly more powerful Slayer of Mount Gram unit instead of the Orcs of Gundabad you used to make. However, the main thing about these Slayers of Mount Gram is the fact you're losing half of your units of Orcs, which was the whole point of the Orcs, was meant to be large numbers. Doesn't matter about the damage they deal, they're just meant to be a meat sponge that could very quickly regenerate. Now you've lost half your units and have only slightly gained more than what you had before in terms of damage and armor, when the stats of the basic Orcs were pretty much the same if you put them both together and consider the different entity numbers. This is a power you should only really use with Hillmen, and by the time you have this power, regardless of the fact you have better powers right next to this power, it doesn't improve your late game in any way. Having the Witch King around and choosing the Thrallmaster discipline, the favour, which is what I've actually done here, I still would not make this specific unit that you get from the power, which feels like is meant to be the whole thing. I think if this was made, if these units were made to be a bit more tough in general, then maybe they feel a bit more worth it. But as I've said, they just feel too much like the original unit they used to be, just with less entities. For 82, we have the Beornings, which summons Grimbeorn, or Beorn, as he is known in this, but he is basically the same as Grimbeorn for Lothlorien at level 10, has his level 10 ability, and his level 3 ability can change into a bear along with the other Beornings, which are also all just the same as the Beorning from Lothlorien at level 1, except they have a timer. And the biggest weakness of this power is actually just the fact that it is only summoning the Beornings and Beorn. If it had a bit more to it, maybe a few more Beornings, because this is a level 3 power, and there are the other level 3 summon power that the dwarves get is by far much higher in value compared to this power. The best this can do against most factions is maybe take out 1 or 2 units, where in some cases you can just ruffle stomp over it with an army when you're summoning this, or the AI is summoning this. In the case of the other power though, you're actually may want to run away from it because of the damage it can deal immediately upon entry. This power just needs a little bit more of that. Maybe make them all bear form to start with, so that actual trample damage is considered a threat. By the time you turn these into bears, if they're not in the front line to begin with, they're going to be gone. Look at that, they're already gone before I could even talk more about them. At 81, we have the Arrow Volley / Arrow Storm for Lothlorien and Arnor. A power that's been in the game since BFME 2 and is still pretty much a reliable tool to kill units, but at the same time not kill them outright. As you can see, the Dunlanding infantryman survived where the axe thrower did not. But the difference between Arnor and Lothlorien is one thing, that the Lothlorien version makes enemies weak to arrows, which is, by the way, pierce damage for 30 seconds. It might also apply to magic damage. I don't know. I imagine because of the fact it says it's against arrows that it only applies to pierce damage. And you can see, yeah, a lot. In fact, all those guys that sat in the building at the time took 0 damage. I'm not sure if that's meant to actually happen, but that's interesting to learn. But yeah, Arrow Volley has always been a power that you see it, you run away from it. You can get a good reaction out of using it, potentially make enemies go into a position you want. But at the end of the day, it's a small AoE damage spell that does what it needs to do. Could do it a little bit better, but at the end of the day, it does what it needs to do. For number 80, we have the Eternal Strife power. A power that has kind of gone under the radar and is probably going to stay that way until maybe some numbers are tweaked about with it. Because it has 3 different forms and all of them, honestly, don't have that big of an impact. You choose one of them, either Moria, Gundabad or Goblin Town. If you choose Moria, you get more poison damage and recruitment speed. Cool. And then you can get some Moria units from your settlements. Not the Goblin Lairs, by the way. Only basic goblins from the Goblin Lairs. If you choose Goblin Town, you can disable buildings, which is cool. But in most cases, if the enemy is already at your doorstep with a large force of Goblin Town goblins, you'll probably get dead anyway. So having the disabling your buildings isn't going to do that much. And then Gundabad giving you extra experience and structure armor is basically saying that you're forced to defend. And if you're the goblins and are forced to defend, you should probably be dead. Let's be honest. The extra armor and the extra experience is so small with goblins in particular. Their need for experience is minimum because they've already got low stats. What's a little bit extra percentage wise going to add to their stats that makes them suddenly powerful is what I'm trying to get at. Giving them leadership doesn't help. Giving them poison damage doesn't help, except if you've got Moria Goblins. Which, by the way, I barely touch Moria Goblins after the first 10 minutes of the game. I start then going to Goblin Town and Gundabad for my infantry. So poison's out of the picture. And then the disabling is probably the only thing I'd ever go with. But then that requires Goblin Town Goblins to be on the field. And honestly, by the time I even touch this power, I don't even use Goblin Town Goblins. I just use them for money. So I'm just having this power active to make more money. Which, as the Goblins, newsflash, you don't need even more money. At 79, we have the Last March of the Ents. A power that is strong. It does a lot of damage. The problem is, you're not just Citadel bashing in Edain like you are in free build Battle for Middle-earth. So the point of this power is mainly just to deal massive amounts of damage as fast as possible, but then there's walls in the way, so you got to destroy the wall, and then the power has already used half its timer, and then you can just destroy the Citadel, so the Citadel's gone. But then at the same time as Rohan, you could also just decide to build some siege, which costs very little in both resources and command points, and just do the same thing as this power, which is disappointing because this power is really good. It's really fun to use this power, but in the grand scheme of things, Rohan doesn't need this power. It's just a nice addition to have it. Hear Treebeard saying Last March of the Ents and then charging in with a bunch of Ents at maximum speed, by the way, which is nice. Unfortunately, their maximum speed is a little bit nerfed, so you'd be throwing stones and then watching them come up and then come back down again. And then the power's done. Which, again, I'm saying this a lot, compared to other powers, it doesn't have the full power that you'd expect of a tier 4 power. At 78, we have Eisenguard Unleashed. A power that summons 2 of each of your tier 2 Urukai units with full upgrades. If you're wondering why I don't sound impressed by that, it's because I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry I'm laughing at that. But yeah, you summon 2 of each of your elite units permanently, which, sure, that's nice. But considering this used to be a power that you could summon at any location as an aggressive tool, and now as a defensive tool that can only be summoned at a citadel, although it does go over the command point limits, you're still just getting 6 units as a tier 4 power. Permanent or not, that doesn't feel good enough. I don't know if it's just me, but that just does not feel good enough. Even if you're summoning this as a last ditch effort to protect your base, if the enemy is attacking your base at full power and you're forced to whip this out before the end, then you're probably still just going to lose anyway. Having those 6 extra units aren't going to save you. Nothing's really going to save you at that point. And just having those 6 extra units just will slow them down that little extra bit. if there's another player around, that might help them in the long run. But unfortunately, these Urukai with upgrades just don't have it. They just don't have enough. At 77, we have the Horn of Gondor / Arnor / the Rallying Call of the Dwarves. All three powers do the exact same thing. 25% attack damage and fear resistance for anyone that is caught in the blast. And that does affect all units in the blast, not just entities, so keep that in mind. Now, the damage is nice. However, you also just have bonus damage in the form of the aggressive stance if you're desperate for the damage. Which I think is the reason why this power barely exists in any faction other than Gondor and the Dwarves. I don't know why Gondor still has this power, honestly. I think they could change it around with something else, but I'm not going to say no to it. But the Dwarves, I like it just because of the fact it has Bomber blowing the giant horn, which is always a nice little nod to the movies that don't get enough love, in my opinion. At 76, we have the attack command for Rohan, which is, if you think about it, exactly the same as Horn of Gondor and Rohan and Rallying Call. Not quite. There is two key differences. One, it gives more damage than the horns from the previous power. And secondly, any peasant in that unit in that radius will get armed with draft. So if you've not got the draft power to instantly give all those peasants their swords and shields, you can just give them swords and shields, and then they do more damage. They have more armor, as well as having the extra 30% damage for 30 seconds. But you can also just use this power on your Rohirrim in the late game and have 30% more damage, which is great. For 30 seconds, that is actually great. Double that up with, I say double that up, just give Theoden Glorious Charge, throw that out there, and then you've got a nearly unstoppable killing machine army that's just going to keep ploughing through the enemy and then just do ridiculous damage afterwards. This is one of my favourite little powers just to add on to all the other nonsense I can do with Rohan. It's so unnecessary, but I'm glad they kept in the thing. And it's just come back off. Cool down, so let's show it again. Love that horn. Number 75, the Eye of Sauron. Not only is it a vision power that Mordor gets, which is already a very big thing because Mordor actually requires a good bit of vision with their slow moving units, but reducing the experience gain of enemy units and heroes is secretly disgusting because that can actually prevent a hero from getting a crucial power at the right time. And the vision, you can see, is quite should not be understated. It's about the same as cave bats, but if you remember what I said about cave bats last time, is that it could take damage. You cannot hurt the Eye of Sauron. It is ineffable. It is not going to get stopped, and it exists for long enough that you can get what you need out of it, and even spy on a golem, which is what you definitely want when you have a Sauron on the field. At 74, we have Kyrs Ravens. Probably the most unique vision power in the game, but definitely not the best. With an ability that allows it to give a structure armor, improve its vision range, you might think, well, on a building like a mineshaft that doesn't have a lot of vision, what's good is that going to be? Well, the secret is, put it on a tower. Towers already are known for having exceptional range. Boost that range by an extra 100%, and you can see a good margin of the map and when you can see enemies. It's about the same power as the ability that Malon-trees can get at level 3 to boost their vision range. And on a tier 1 power, which can be moved to different structures. And not only does it give it that extra armor and vision, enemies deal less damage. So unlike the cave bats that I've ranked a lot lower, this power is indestructible as long as the building is around, and it can be moved to different buildings at any point as long as the power is off cooldown. And it also weakens enemies. And if you put that with Iron Hills, ooh, you're in for a spicy combo. At number 73, we have the Vision of the Pantea. Definitely the largest range vision power in the game. Probably the most slept on power because it's on Isengard. But if you just want to spy on your enemy base and then have almost no idea that you're doing it for such a long time, you just need this power. It can give you ideas as to who you're playing against if you're going against randoms and you don't know. And it can also just be used in a large open area where you can see, oh, all these layers still exist. Maybe I can take them over and get the money before someone else arrives. It doesn't last forever, but the cooldown isn't that bad. And being a tier 1 power, it just means you can get it straight from the bat and get good value out of it. Number 72, Tunnel of the Deep. A quick power that just summons a small little mine shaft like Undermine, but instead of actually making a mine network, it just keeps summoning more and more troops, which are smaller versions of each of your basic troops that just keep spawning for a long time, which you might say is good. It is good. However, you can also very easily destroy this building and then you've just wasted a power instead of getting any value out of it. And also, these units don't last for a very long time and they're just basic goblins, so the value you can get from them is limited. And you could just be giving your enemies free experience by letting all these entities exist and then die. So always keep in mind, this is meant to be used as just pretty much a harassment tool. Use it when your enemy is unable to respond to it, and you'll see the value will just keep climbing out of the stratosphere. Number 71, Industry. A power that has really no need to be explained. Target a building, have it produce incredible amounts of resources, and then just keep building stuff with those resources. I think that's all that needs to be said. It's really good on the ruthless exploitation lumber mills that just set it even higher, and I can't remember if it works on the steel workers, but if it does, that's also a really good choice. Number 70, the Breeze of Monway. Very similar to Chill Wind for Angmar, this power is meant to be used as a displacement tool to either engage or get away from a dangerous fight. However, unlike Chill Wind, where it focuses everything in the epicenter, you start from the top left and work your way down to the right. And you can see it has a much larger range as well, which can be very advantageous for you if you know how to put it in the right place. If you start switching around where the camera is, you might lose position of where it's going to come from. And in that pivotal moment where cavalry charges through, that cavalry can either be stopped or you can keep going and trample your precious units, which, as in large risk, you need to get that value perfectly. Number 69, Fel Wind. Very easy at just bringing enemies all together. It's another displacement tool, just like Breeze of Monway. Does a little bit of damage, which is not the main thing about this power. It is also a combo tool of Angmar, which is why I'm putting it slightly higher than the Imladris version, because you can get Helagwin's Freezing Arrow Rain to keep everything else in place a little bit longer, and then also throw down the Plague. You can throw down the Corpse Rain, freeze everything in the location for even longer, just surround them and take them out. Angmar has a lot of combo potential in their faction with their powers and abilities, and it stings when that happens. At number 68, we have Journey to Vaalnor, a power that I would have put a lot lower on the list if it weren't for the recent update, which firstly improved the visual by a metric ton, and then also allows you to summon the Wandering Company, which is your new starting tier unit, which can be used to heal everyone around you as a passive well, and you still also have the small summon of the Elven Warriors that can defend the building. It still is very susceptible to just being destroyed. It has the same health as Tunnel of the Deep, but it also just comes with the value of immunifying magic and elemental damage. Ignore the fact I've just made up a new word. And it just gives it, you can eventually gain the experience to summon those Elven Warriors to defend yourself. It's a good power. Don't sleep on it. Just be warned if you're recording like I do and have this playing, because it does have copyright music at Elbereth Gilfoniel and all that. At 67, we have Tainted Land, a power that actually moves against the setbacks of the Horns of Gondor and Rohan and the Dwarves by the fact that it's not just a target and then whatever's in that target is going to have the buff. You target an area and everything in the area gets buffed. The area is a much larger area of effects. Your units can stay in it for a long amount of time. And it gives armor instead of damage, which in a lot of cases should not be slept on. The extra armor with Uruk-hai in particular, when they've got their full upgrades, means that they're going to take much less damage against very hard-hitting enemies at the crucial moment they need that extra little sliver of health. Sometimes it'll matter, sometimes it doesn't. It's all subjective. It's a tier 1 power, make good use of it. At 66, we have Gondorian and Arnorian architecture. That's right, rebuild with a rename. But it does the exact same thing as it did in vanilla. Really powerful, still a very big AoE. Could be reduced a little bit, but I feel like the AoE is just about the right size for how powerful it is as a tier 1 power. Never sleep on this power. It has saved me many times in my games with Gondor. Number 65, the Obelisk. Another vision tool, another weakening tool like Kyrs Ravens, but this building has very good range just on all on its own. You do require vision to place it down, similar to other powers like the Druidine Stone, but unlike that, this has a lot more value compared to the tier 2 version that Rohan gets, in the fact that it actually, for your opponent, tells them what form or which favour you've chosen with the Witch King. As you can see, I've got the orange tint at the moment. That is because I chose favour of the Hillmen. But if you go for the favour of Wizards and Barrow-wights, you can actually put your Barrow-wights into your Barrows and take them out from these obelisks, meaning that it actually acts as an undermine for your slowest units, which, again, I already mentioned with Undermine that it is weak, considering it's for the dwarves, but for a slow-moving unit, as a single entity that is very easily picked off if left alone, having these obelisks to just transport them is far more valuable than you might understand. But also just the fact that with Angmar, just more weakening effects just adds to their ability to harass, but not in a bad way, because the obelisk, like many other tier 1 and 2 powers, has very low health, so it can be taken down even with the damage reduction it gives. At 64, we have the Lone Towers for Gondor, Arnor, and the Dwarves. That's right, another power that summons a building is about in the middle, and there's a good reason why. Good vision, similar to that of the Obelisk, though a little bit less. You can use it with the Dwarves to put Kyrs Ravens onto for their extra vision, which is really good. However, the main value of the Lone Tower is the fact that it can just shoot back at anything that comes within range, and that has always been personally one of my favourite things to do, is just spawn this to slow down the enemy. And with Gondor, you've got powers that we've already mentioned, like Gondorian Architecture, or heroes like Beregond that can support these structures to be even more impactful, to have that extra value to push out against an enemy. And even though it's a defensive tool, it can act as an offensive tool when you also consider you can put units into them to protect them even more. Although do keep in mind your unit is still limited by your vision. So in the case of the dwarves, that's actually good, because the extra vision from Kyrs Ravens means that those Dale Archers can shoot from a mile away if they really needed to. Or even the Dwarf Archers, if you put them in their formation, they remember they're in their new formation, so they have the extra range when shooting. Number 63, the Terror of Cilith Ungol, also known as Shelob. And unlike her vanilla version, she does have some powers that just make her a very valuable, aggressive tier 2 power. She can summon some of her children, which unfortunately are spiders, so their main thing is tanking instead of dealing damage. However, Shelob in herself can do a lot of damage, and thanks to her spider web, can just make units unable to move for a long period of time. So even though this is classified as an aggressive tool, it can also be used as a defensive tool to help you get away from an engagement you might not want to be standing in anymore. Especially if you're wanting to protect your very, very valuable heroes, for example, or your Nazgul. Those Nazgul are not cheap to get back, and if you've already upgraded them, even more so. So use Shelob as a tool to disengage from dangerous fights, or even better, trap an enemy hero. She lasts long enough that even pikemen trampling through them, it doesn't matter if she dies that way. They're still getting enough value out of her. Number 62, Ruthless Exploitation. A power that is generically good, but falls under two weaknesses. One, it requires trees, which as a tier 3 power might mean that there's no more trees around to get value out of, even though the money you get from it is already exponential. You're getting hundreds just for one thing, and this is with industry, so that power is increasing up in strength. However, you also weaken any building you are near. The radius might not be that big, but if you can using this as a aggressive tool to weaken an enemy building, you're using it wrong. Because then if you build over that building, or your building gets destroyed, you've gained no value out of a tier 3 power, or you're weakening your resource generation from another building, which is not what you want out of this. You should place this specifically in areas with large amounts of trees that haven't been touched, and just don't get devastation, in my opinion. Number 61, Call the Horde. A power that has always been known since BFME 1, however, was not brought back into BFME 2 and Rise of the Witch King, despite the fact that it can just produce orcs on a galactic scale from any orc barracks, and not just from your base Mordor either. Kirith Ungol orcs, Dol Guldur orcs, and Minas Morgul orcs can also be spawned faster. However, there is one thing I noticed about this power that I don't use enough. The fact I don't use this power enough is because I never have a time where I'm actually running low on orcs, if you get what I mean. I always just have enough orcs. I'm always above my command point limit, so I never need to think, oh, I need to recruit more all of a sudden. No, I never really get to that point in the late stages of the game, which is when you should be using this power for if someone, for example, uses Army of the Dead on you, that's when you might want to use this power. But unless you're playing against Gondor, who's going to have a power that can wipe out your entire army? And even if they did, you surely would just have more units stacked up anyway. You can use this and it's good. You can not use it and you'll still be good. That's pretty much what I'm saying here. Number 60, Drums in the Deep. A power that is honestly a bit slept on, even by me. Because every drum, and even goblin drummers, by the way, that you can summon from your basic Moria ruins, just gives all your units 30% extra damage that nearby them, while also quadrupling their armor, meaning they take less damage, so they're not going to get singled out as easily. And then just also make things temporarily faster as well, which, you know, it's crazy speeds. Crazy speeds we're working with here. And this is melee infantry, moving about the same speed as slightly decelerated cavalry. So as long as you're just slowing a unit down, with just bogging them down with units, you can get your most important things out of danger without needing to worry. Number 59, the Watcher in the Water. Not quite the dense powerhouse he used to be back in vanilla, where you could just put him on top of a bunch of units and they all just get knocked into the sky. You can still do that technically, but you need to put a bit of forethought into it in the way that you summon him, which is you have to have him on a blank placement of land, and you can even have him resurface in a new location that he is able to reach after a certain amount of time he's been around for. Because that's right, he is now a permanent summon. He can just be put in a choke point, and unless an enemy has ranged units to go through him, they're not getting through that area anymore. And then you can just have him go away to a new location that is not too far out of his original range, but you can see he will make his way out and make his way to a new location, which again can be used as a way to bushwhack anyone that gets too close, and then you can just have him hit anything that's in range. He can still be killed, of course, but not as likely as he used to be. And I'm not sure what he just picked up. He picked up a bird and he's eating it. Number 58, Luthien Song. A song that I can't allow to be played on here because, again, I don't want to get demonetized. So, let's just read about what it says. Enemies continuously become slower and lose more and more armor until their movement speed is less than half and their armor is halved. That means you are making potentially elite tier units be worth basic tier unit stats if not even less than that, so that your already elite tier units are just way and above them in every category and can just slice them down really well. I don't use it because, again, I don't want to get demonetized. But anyone that does want to use it, it's quite easy to use. It's not like Arrow Volley that it has a bit of a wind up before the negative effects start happening. It just works straight away. So unless your enemy is a bunch of cavalry, you're more than likely going to keep them trapped in that bubble for a long time. This used to be like it could actually stun units. I'm glad they changed it a little bit to be that it's not too oppressive, and it actually weakens enemies as well in the fact that their armor can get reduced too. Number 57, Earthquake. Another vanilla power that has honestly had a slight change to it that makes it more powerful, but not by making it just deal more damage. Your base damage is the giant earthquake that happens. However, you also have 2 aftershocks as well to consider, meaning that if you throw down the healing of rebuild, or start repairing a building, or try to repair the gates before it starts collapsing again, you're not going to get that chance. Those extra aftershocks are going to be constantly forcing you to accept your fate. And your units are unaffected by all of this. So you can just throw this down on a camp base, for example, and have your units move in. Your enemy is unable to respond, but you are doing massive amounts of damage and pressure all at once. But instead of just being all in one moment and then the enemy gets a chance to react, they've got to spend 2 more aftershocks of waiting before they can actually do anything. Number 56, Avalanche. A power that, as again, like Earthquake, had a small change to it that makes it far more oppressive than it used to be. In the fact that it does a lot of damage, yes, but then afterwards, all enemy buildings that are hit by this avalanche in even the smallest capacity, including units, are disabled. Deal no damage, cannot move. It is incredible how much this actually gets used, and is actually really oppressive as well. Unlike Earthquake, which just allows you to recruit your units, activate abilities on buildings, for example, a Bastion of Winter to protect your base from an Earthquake. Blizzard stops all of that. You cannot recruit, you get no money. Heroes that are recruiting don't get to keep doing anything. Units that are stuck on there, if they're not already dead, are very close to being and are unable to move while that effect is still active. You're forced into a position where Angmar can actually just reign supreme. And again, it does not affect you in any way. These units took no damage while in that avalanche. So you can walk in and be unaffected, unlike what it used to be like in vanilla. Number 55, the Army of Gondor. A power that is always going to have value. It summons siege, it summons archers, it summons spearmen, swordsmen, cavalry, and a hero. You know what also does all of that? Your faction. That's the main problem of this power, is the fact that it is basically just summoning a smaller version of Aragorn with units that you can make from your army. Well, you can make yourselves, give them upgrades, and also use their formations, whereas in the Army of Gondor you cannot. Which is, I think, the biggest weakness of this power. I love this power, I'm not going to lie, I will still use it more times than not, but I would not choose this over, saying, going all your earlier powers, because there's some powers for Arnor that are very important to get. Number 54, the Traitors of Arnor. A summon power that summons 3 temporary units, which all have the strength of around Citadel Guard, have a mix between spear and sword, meaning that they always will deal high revenge damage against that pesky cavalry unit you might not want to have to deal with, and have Scavenger. But not only that, if they reach level 2 before their timer expires, they become a permanent unit. And then you can give them Forged Blades and Heavy Armor, make them even more powerful. And they're amazing, right? One problem. Having them near any other unit, as you can see with this single Orc here, gives them a armor debuff. And these turncoats will make themselves stronger for every turncoat unit nearby. So this is meant to be used as a separate force all to itself. Do not keep these with your main army. You will notice that you will just not be doing as well. Your units will be dying off faster than usual, and for Angmar, that happens a lot. So keep these units away from your main force if you even get to keep them alive for long enough. Use these as a flanking force, as a settlement sieging force, because again, they have scavenger. Get that extra money, make good use of it. Don't keep them in your main army. I've made that mistake too many times. At number 53, we have the Three Hunters. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli all made into a single unit hero, and has 3 different forms, can increase their speed, and has 1 power from each of them, which is just good. It's just a good power all around. It's a shame that as Rohan, they can't ride horses themselves, which wouldn't make sense because Gimli is not known to ride a horse, he's known to ride him with Legolas. And your main faction theme is just having cavalry. So I would have a small peasant force around these guys, because even if you have Aragorn on as the main hero, which gives them significantly reduced damage taken, they still can just be killed very easily. And even though you get these for free when you get the power, you then have to pay for them if they die. So have gambling, have peasants just surround these guys and let them do what they need to do. Number 52, Training of the Firstborn. Hey you, yes, you watching at home. Have you been playing it in largest recently and haven't built Eregion Forges? You haven't got Erister to get you your upgrades, but you've already got a tier 4 power? No worries! You can now get all your units upgraded for free with an extra price on top. Yes, all your units now can just get upgrades at a substantial cost increase, but considering that your upgrades will cost about the same amount, if you just have Eristor in your barracks, you can honestly just recruit these instantly with full upgrades. You don't have to go through the process of making sure they get the Eregion blades, etc, etc, and then it's done. Really good. I'd say it's a very middle of the road power, which is why it's in very much the middle of the list. But a power that I typically don't look at because there's better powers on the other side of the power tree, and I always get Eregion Forges and I always get the upgrades before I get to tier 4 powers. It's just how I work. Anyone that's like that in explanation I was saying about earlier, you go for this. You enjoy your life. Number 51, Draft. Remember back in the day when Draft used to just make every unit on the map instantly gain upgrades? Well, this is even better because you can target buildings. It makes them gain upgrades as soon as they are summoned. And not only that, you get protection for your important resource building that also makes your peasants stronger. But not only that, for every drafted building you have, you reduce the cost of banner carriers. Which, by the way, if you have peasants that don't have draft, get them to level 2 and they get draft anyway. Edain Mod makes drafting peasants the easiest of any patch, vanilla, mod, etc. This just works. This is amazing. You need to protect your flour mills and farms, yes, but this makes it a lot easier to do. These little guys walking around, they do work. They are about as strong as a peasant with full upgrades. Number 50, the Veil of Mist. Remember that ability that all Lothlorien unit and Mirkwood units get? They call Ambush of the Wood Elves. That gives them extra damage or knockback if they're camouflaged. Well, Veil of Mist allows you to use that as a power. But not only that, it also increases the speed of all units that were in the mist as it was played. Not just your units, allied units as well. If you're helping an ally keep an important unit from getting destroyed, or even better, an important hero from getting killed, you can help them run off the map or even run into engagements at the right time. And this power has a very quick recharge. You can already see, just me blabbering on, it's already got a quarter of its thing back. That's mainly thanks to that power here, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Number 49, Frozen Land. The exact opposite of Veil of Mist. It's another land effect like Tainted Land, so anything inside of it is going to get affected. They're going to lose their movement speed and all leaderships. And that's not just from leaderships of heroes. Leaderships of units, all kinds of leaderships are just gone. And that's pretty much the same as Freezing Rain. But the main value is, of course, the massive halving of their movement speed is so crucial when you want to, for example, set up a Fel Wind. set up a plague, set up the arrow storm. Just keep everything trapped in one location and get it out. That is the power of Angmar's oppression. Number 48, Influence of the Evening Star. With Imladris, you have a lot of very powerful heroes that can take a lot of damage, for example, but also have really good abilities. So why not get this power? When you can get Arwen from your Citadel really cheap, and then you've got your twins that can do massive damage through their critical hits, their Blade Prison, Elrond with his Water Horses, his Restoration to restore all abilities instantly after they've been used, Glorfindel with his Light Stun, his AoE Light, his Blade of Light, and then Arwen herself has her abilities. You've got so many things to work with, and then it also specifies not Imladris heroes. So in situations where you have your friends to help playing with you, hero stacking with everything together, you can have all your heroes have massive healing while out of combat, and their abilities come back even faster. Imagine this with Gandalf. Imagine this with Saruman when they get their passive abilities to increase their recharge rate of abilities, so they can use Word of Power or Lightning Storm really quickly. It's crazy how much value this one power can give, as long as you keep one little hero alive, who, by the way, can also ride a horse, so she's safer than usual. Number 47, the Defenders of Mirkwood. Summoning Tauriel on her own may not seem like a lot, but it also comes with the bonus of being able to summon more troops on any other building on the map. Well, of yours at least. So if you have Tauriel in one position, have some elves to spawn in another position. Some of them will always spawn here, some of them will always spawn at Tauriel. But then you can also just have them deal more damage of Tauriel's guard by having her target an enemy hero, and also switch to her sword instead of her bow. So she is actually comparable to Legolas in comparison with damage on a raw scale, but also just has the extra benefit of having troops that can defend a crucial point in two different locations if you are that desperate to protect something. And this works on any of your buildings, by the way, not just a settlement or your outpost here. This also works on the trees that you can summon from Elven Wood, and even other buildings if you have the chance to look around on that. Number 46, Plea to the Eagles for both Gondor and Arnor. Did you know Arnor actually gets this one power point cheaper? But regardless, this power is a way of reminding people that if you don't have archers, you're going to get punished for it really, really badly. Summoning 3 eagles that will constantly send units into the sky and then drop them, which means even your heroic units are not safe from these terrors. It just means you've got to be really, really careful when engaging them. Archer-heavy factions will find no trouble getting rid of these equals, and this power is meant to be used against units only. You try using it against buildings, it's not going to do a lot of damage. This is a unit killing machine, but not used for buildings anymore, which thankfully that is no longer a part of this power, because being able to destroy a fortress with 4 eagles in Age of the Ring is not as fun as you think. Number 45, Radagast the Brown. Look, it's Radagast the Brown on foot. Look, it's Radagast the Brown on an eagle. Look, it's Radagast the Brown on a sleigh. You've got 3 types of uses for Radagast depending on what you need to deal with. If you need to deal with a dangerous large clump of weak infantry, you summon the foot version because he can summon this thorn bush, which does damage to anything inside of it as well as slowing them. And he's also got his wizard breath with the wizard blast. You summon the eagle against more elite troops, where you can summon an extra eagle for an extra slash, or have vision with the crows. And also the sleigh can be used mainly against archers because of the massive damage he does, and weakening enemy units at the same time is very valuable. The extra eagle hit and his healing, break the spell, is also a very valuable thing that you get on all versions. Just restoring health to anyone in the aura. Don't sleep on Radagast. He is too versatile to be ignored. And you can choose any of these powers one at a time. Choose one and then use another later on and use another one later on. But of course, all 3 are tied to one cooldown. So use one and the rest of them will be used up until it all comes off cooldown. I wish I could do English better. Number 44, the Dwarven Citadel. This citadel has two differences to that of its vanilla version. Number one, you cannot build walls from the citadel, and number two, you can summon units from the citadel. That is it. Other than that, this is the exact same thing as in vanilla. Really powerful, devastating, should not be underestimated, should get destroyed instantly, and yeah, it's just good. It's just really good. Stupidly good sometimes. Number 43, the Mystical Stream. It's a form of vision, although its main purpose is not meant to be a form of vision, it's meant to be a form of suppression. In the fact that you can spawn one of these little creeks, and then you can spawn another one of these little creeks where it has direct line of fire towards, and then anything that walks through that gets massively slowed down as if it was like frozen land. Except you choose which way it works, you know how it works, it doesn't require vision to work. It's just great. Just a great power. You want to be able to keep an eye on a choke point without your enemy thinking you know what they're doing. Throw this down on that choke point. They're not getting through there without you knowing about it, and them being slowed down at the same time. Some people don't even notice his power is active until it's too late. And Lothlorien with that extra vision can really come back from a close defeat in certain cases, because that extra bit of vision, and for the fact it lasts this long, this is probably the longest lasting vision power that can also just turn Isengard explosive mines into a dud, because they'll be trying to destroy a building that has too much health. It can't be hurt. Let's put it that way. Health of 9999999. Let's call it good on that one. Can't be touched. Number 42, Fires of Isengard. I know a lot of people would like to just reenact the scene with the berserkers in the mine in Helm's Deep. Well, now you can in Edain, because you just get to summon a large amount of mines and a berserker, and no matter what you do, you can't stop this from happening. It just happened, and damage is dealt to everything, to buildings, to units, and the closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you are dealing. And oh, it's satisfying. It's not the greatest power in the world. Compared to Earthquake and Blizzard, it does just pure damage, which is great. But the main reason I'm putting it higher than both of those is the fact that it is just a pure damage attack, which you have to use before actually going into a base, for example. The fact it can destroy walls and actually detonate other mines at the same time means that you can just set it all up and knock it all down like dominoes, and then send your army in to do all the damage, because the debilitating main recruitment construction buildings is good, but being able to destroy walls, that is something normally only Siege is capable of doing. Number 41, Reinforcements from Harad. Very similar to the Free Hunters in the fact that they get summoned on the side of the map, but unlike the Free Hunters, you can keep making more of these as long as you have the command points necessary to get them. And you're getting 2 units of cavalry, which Mordor already lack on their own without the help of the Nazgul. So you're getting 2 cavalry units that protect you in ways that other units can't. But you also get the Mumakil, the devastating Colossus. That is already one of the strongest monsters in the game. Made even stronger with things like War Paint, which gives it that lovely little War Paint look on it that it normally doesn't get to begin with. But also your troops can be upgraded with forward blades and heavy armor if you get the influence of Sauron on the banner. And you can also put a unit of archers on top of here. So Black Orc archers. Now you've got mobile, damage-reducing arrows being fired from the back of a Mumakil. So it means you have to kill the Mumakil before you even get rid of the damage-reducing effect. Oh, it's really good. Number 40, the Bloodline of Numenor. Arnor's most unique and powerful power by a pretty big margin, actually. And the fact it just regens you over time is so effective. Any faction that does damage to your units, no matter who it is, what it is, you just get to heal it back as long as you're not in combat. That is insane. That is crazy strong. Of course, it is only limited to outside of combat, but the healing is fast. You can take like all the way down to 1 health, and it'll all be back in less than a minute, which is higher healing than a well healing. And the fact that it's a passive means that all your units are getting this permanently while they're outside of combat. Cavalry is your best unit to use this with because they're constantly hitting and running. into enemy units, getting in, getting out, doing amazing work. Wham bam, you've done great. Well done. Number 39, the Minions of the White Hand. And I say minions because there's more than one of them. You get 3 in fact. You get Grishnak's Boys, you get the Wildmen of Dunland, which is a unique Wildmen of Dunland unit, and the Traitors of Rohan. And unlike the Traitors of Arnor, which weaken every enemy unit, every ally unit around them, these units weaken themselves. They are not meant to work together. Because these are men of Rohan, these are men of Dunland who hate the men of Rohan, and these are orcs, which both of these people hate. And as you can see, these guys are basically the Sarnak Axemen. The cavalry is the largest cavalry unit in the game, with 15 entities, with pretty decent trample. And the orcs just get, their main thing is the fact they get Grishnak, which is a poison attacker, can do more damage against one enemy, and can also just double the damage of his orcs for 10 seconds. Which, yep, all of them individually are good. Use them with your units well in moments where your enemy will not expect them. They all have the same summon animation, but one of them is very obviously different in the form of, you can hear Saruman through Theoden's voice saying, "You have no power here." So if you ever hear that, prepare to run or fight for your life, because these cavalry can hurt a lot. This is definitely the key unit for this power. Number 38, his deadliest servants. The middle tier power for Mordor that used to be an influence of Sauron ability on the Citadel. So they had to nerf it into making it a power that you had to get to make your Nazgul even just more stupidly powerful. You can give them armor for all 4 of the main Nazgul, the Dark Marshal, Shadow Lord, Kamor the Easterling, and the Witch King. But you can also give the Dark Marshal or the Shadow Lord their Ring Hunter forms, where they can all ride Fel Beasts. All 4 of them can ride on their Fel Beasts if you choose their non-armoured counterpart. You also get a buff for the Dark Riders, the Black Riders even, which gives them slightly more health and armour, damage even, which gives them about a third of the health of the Dark Marshal and about the quarter of his damage, and a quarter of the Shadow Lord's health and a third of his damage. You've got to really be careful with these units still, because if they die, you have to repay for their upgrade. But that can also mean if you have these forms as their Ring Hunter forms to find the ring, if they die in that form, so be it. You now get them back, and you can get them back in their armoured states to get their unique abilities. Reducing damage dealt by reflecting it to the enemy, removing the armour of all things so they can be killed in basically one melee attack, summoning your best units, your best elite troop, your heroic troop even, with the Easterlings, or even just weaken everyone around you and just make you strong against heroes as the Witch King, because it is always his hour. 37, we have the Grey Company, which I was originally going to rank a lot lower until I realised these units have an ability that boosts the stats of a certain type of unit, which is, as you can see here, nearby archers gain armor, nearby swordsmen gain armor, nearby spearmen gain armor. On top of that, Halbarad can just heal troops while out of combat, and the Eladon and Elrohir twins can heal themselves and all nearby units for 50% of their maximum health. Half healing, just instantly, just a snap of the finger for all units. Incredible. Doesn't matter if it doesn't last long, because this unit, this power is a good way to refresh your main force to then get ready to keep going. Don't let these be don't use these on their own. They're meant to be used with your army. I know I've in the past used them a lot on their own and gained very little value out of them. Use them with your army and the value will just start falling down out of nowhere. It's amazing how much you can just uplift your forces with this one power. 36, Awaken the Worm. Another vanilla power that has had only one minor change to it, but has actually made it far more impactful because of it. After the worm has been summoned and moves out from where it emerged from, you get a tunnel with a small amount of health, but you get units that can then exit the tunnel network from their main base to then join the battlefield with the worm. And also gain more damage in the process. I think if this was added to the Undermine for the dwarves, there'd actually be a lot more of an impactful ability. But the fact that it doesn't last very long as well does give reason for that extra damage. But obviously the main thing about this power is meant to be the worm. You're not meant to be using this power to just spawn units in. You're summoning a worm that breathes fire and kills nearly anything that it can touch with that fire breath. Really good power, even if it still is mostly vanilla. Number 35, Gandalf the Grey, who is definitely is most likely the most dangerous form of Gandalf in the game, and he can only be made from the dwarves. Thanks to, one, his firework, which can burn nearly anything in that large area of effect to cinders. He has Wizard Blast, but as a nice little added thing, it's firework themed. And can also throw burning pine cones, which does massive damage to buildings. So not only does Gandalf have an ability to deal with large groups of units, dealing with smaller groups of units, but can also destroy buildings with little to no trouble, is incredible. And upon his arrival, he also just is unable to use his abilities because he is coming in a giant flash of light, meaning all enemies are terrified for a few seconds. And that is all you need for Gandalf. This is definitely the most dangerous form of Gandalf. Being only a tier 3 power makes him, so satisfying to use Gandalf. And I always run away from Gandalf whenever I'm playing against the dwarves because I respect the damage he is capable of doing. At 34, we have Plague, or as it's also known in the actual game files, Outbreak, which, as we've already talked about quite a bit with how it can be moved with Fel Wind to keep enemies stuck in the Outbreak, and then Frozen Land to make them not be able to walk away in time. But this power starts off as a small AoE that slowly expands outwards, as you can see, and unlike poison damage from, for example, goblins and Dogaldor orcs, this DOT is far more dangerous, and I mean far more dangerous. Any unit that is not at least elite or heroic tier and is not prepared to take a lot of damage is going to die. Orcs, against orcs, you've taken them out. Against goblins, you've taken them out. Gondor is basic infantry. Rohan peasants, even Rohan cavalry, if they don't have the right things to keep them alive, are going to be taken down. Anything without heavy armor can be easily just removed from the game with this power, and you can even set it up so that they will be forced to sit through the entirety of that outbreak instead of just having a few seconds of it and then running away. That is what's so impactful about Angmar. It's the fact that so many powers from their entire power tree makes Outbreak so much more powerful and dangerous. Number 33, Tom Bombadil. Very similar to that of his vanilla counterpart. He does slightly more damage, has a lot more health, and just takes less damage from everything, lowering the damage of all nearby enemies by 90% for 10 seconds wherever he dances and treads. And also with his Merry Song, applies that debuff as well. And can also just teleport from one location to another to be in a more advantageous spot, so that nothing can really actually kill him. And he just does incredible damage. And he's a power that I typically go for first at tier 3 with Imladris. He's not the best of the powers, I'll admit, but his effect on just reducing damage means your entire army is no longer under threat, thanks to just this one merry little fellow who, if you don't deal with, will just continue to keep blasting you with his merriment and dancing, which you should always join in on the dance when you see him. Always join in with the music. Number 32, Reinforcements of Rune. Another reinforcement power, just like Harad, but at tier 2, which means you're getting the equivalent of 2 elite troops, which cost a total of 120 command points for free, just for having a power, and if you have the command points for them. And then if you, again, can give them Forge Blades and Heavy Armor, and this is just your counter to most powerful units that enemy factions will use against you. Sometimes the orc spam is just not enough, and your heroes aren't able to hit enough things at once. So this is where the rune men come from, and I can say with 100% a guarantee, this is the power that I always go for first with Mordor. You get the Overseers, you get this power, and you will always get value from nothing. And then that nothing will make more value, so you can spend your money in better positions instead of wasting it on the equivalent of your Orc pikemen, because you're getting a much more powerful pikeman against cavalry and a much more powerful axeman unit, which I don't think has a high revenge damage compared to the pikeman, but still will make people think, oh, maybe I shouldn't charge into this unit because it's a rune unit. People can actually get confused by just looking at them and thinking, oh, does this unit have revenge damage? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You have to find out for yourself. At 31, we have the Alliance of Men and Elves, which summons 3 units of Galathrim and Haldia, who has 2 powers. Firstly, giving a hero extra damage and armor for a whole minute, which is already very impactful when you have heroes like Theoden, but also can just give all archers in an area 50% more damage. Not just your archers, all archers. So if you've got an ally that also has really powerful archers, or if you've got horse archers, just have them deal more damage. It doesn't even specify what damage, it just says more damage. So I'm not sure if trample damage is affected by this, but horse archers might just work with this. But yeah, the Elvish target order for the extra damage just means you're getting the equivalent of Silverthorn arrows of 3 units to just attack things constantly, and you can even just turn them into sword form and still get this boost, this buff, which again you should not sleep on. A lot of times when I've seen this power come out, I've had to run away from it just because of how dangerous it is. It is very stationary though. Once it's played, you normally don't see it move, and by the time it's gone, you can probably just book it out of there and you'll be fine. It's not an aggressive power in the form of that it deals damage to like buildings and is oppressive in that form. It is a defensive tool in that it deals with a problem that you otherwise couldn't deal with because it's a summon. At number 30, we have the Sanctuary of Knowledge. Do you like your units? Do you like how all of your units have a unique ability which just allows them to do amazing things? For example, deal more damage to things without armor, have a massive amount of armor but reduce speed, heal units in the vicinity of this unit while it is sitting still. Yes, all of these things are amazing. But you know, want to know what? You can use them even faster and gain experience faster to use these abilities with even greater potency just by getting this one middle power that costs 4 power points. And now your faction has turned from already amazing to being able to do even more. But unlike the formations of Arnor and Gondor, which requires you to keep this permanent formation, you can just click the ability and then it's done. You've got the buffs, you use them, get amazing value out of it, and then start the process all over again. And if you use this with the Veterans of the Last Alliance and their experience gaining ability, you will have max tier units for the entirety of your game. Not a joke, it's not a scam, it's an amazing ability which, merged with this power, can do incredible things. Number 29, Might of the Iron Crown. Another middle tier passive that has a very similar effect to Sanctuary of Knowledge in the fact that it reduces the cooldown of all hero abilities by 20%. But wait, there's more. Since the recent patches have come out, this power now has even more to offer, all because of the Witch King. Depending on what you choose as your favoured faction from Angmar, if you choose Men of Khal Doom, you can just gain bonus. This is around newly conquered settlements, which I believe is armor around every new settlement you gain, and regeneration, which is incredible. Thrall Masters, choosing the Thralls, which is the Hillman or Orc camp, you can summon this beautiful little building here, which I've been hovering over, which allows you to summon Thrall Masters and Huldar to the battlefield. So your best units you've just been upgrading, and maybe even also have Blackguard officers for, are now even more easy to access, and straight into the battle lines they will come. For the monsters, you gain armor nearby ally settlements and regenerate nearby those buildings, and heal more from Devour with werewolves, which is a lot of little bonuses, but aren't that impactful because you don't typically want to go with monsters anyway, because it only affects those 2 units. And then lastly, with sorcerers and wights, sorcerers can lead more acolytes to battle, and whites move faster near barrows. However, do note that any sources you get before choosing this favour and having this power will not gain more acolytes. You have to recruit new sorcerers after you have chosen the favour and have the power to gain the more acolytes. I've made that mistake before, but I have noticed it happen in times when I have done this on my own. And yes, it can actually impact how much you can do with your sorcerers in one instance. Number 28, the Pact of Hatred, and also by extension, Untamed Allegiance, which is 2 powers in one, which with the Misty Mountains allows you to take over any wild lair on the map that are not dragons. Yeah, because there are some dragon wild lairs on some maps. But also allows you to spawn a goblin, warg, spider, or troll lair. And then you just randomly get one, and then you can use this power at the same time to then take over that lair. You can also take over Barrow-Wight lairs on maps like the Edain Mod that have Barrow-Wights. Although having Barrow-Wights as the Misty Mountains isn't that good because you don't get any of the buffs for them. Anyway, any of these buildings you can recruit your base troop, Stone Troll, wargs, and Mountainous wargs, your basic goblins without any of the Moria poison, and spiderlings, which you also can get from Dol Guldur, and then the Brood Mothers gives you a large summation of your entire roster. You're losing out, if you don't get this power, on roughly a quarter of your total roster in general, because half of it you get through Moria, and the other quarter you get from Gundabad and Goblin Town. So not having this power and not having this ability for more recruitment from a new location which does not count as a settlement or anything like that. You just get more recruitment for free, and if this building gets destroyed by either yourself or someone else, you still get some money out of it. Even if it's your opponent that's getting the money out of it, at least they're getting something for interacting with and removing these threats. 27. The Weapon Art of the Dwarves. A simple in-function power that you can get just in time for when you can actually start affording all of these little upgrades. But not only that, as soon as you get this power, any unit that has both Forged Blades and Heavy Armor in your roster gains extra damage and armor. However, it is important to know that it only specifies Dwarven units, so the Men of Dale and Men of Lake Town will not benefit from this. But to be fair, most of the time I don't use the Men of Lake Town or Dale, so even then, this is still a very useful power just to have in your roster. And not only that, it just gives you everything you really need. It gives you just the right amount of things for doing absolutely nothing more than you've already been doing. You just get it, and then you just have more damage. Amazing. Eredluin Dwarves now have damage comparable to their other counterparts. Iron Hills Dwarves have even more damage to complement their already incredible health and damage reduction abilities. And Erebor, oh, don't even get me started on Erebor. Their damage goes just even... That extra bit of damage is enough to make it even more. Like, they just destroy everything just stupidly fast. Number 26. Everyone say it with me. Grond. Grond. Grond is an amazing power with one job. Destroy buildings. And oh boy does it do it really, really well. But not only that, anything that is in its path that is an enemy will get slowly trampled to death with just having this thing walk through them. It's incredible how hard it is to actually counter Grond with any melee troops. However, I do like to note that cavalry is the best way to deal with this 20,000 health Colossus. Whenever this enters the battlefield, you know it's a moment you need to be afraid, because it is coming and it is not going to stop until it has destroyed everything that it can touch. At 25, we have Darkness. The last of the full map weather effects, and it is far better than its other two counterparts. Not just because of the fact that it is, firstly, a way of cancelling the nasty little freezing rain, but also because all units on the map that are an ally gain 25% damage and armor. And let's just let that sink in for a second, because yes, in a 1v1, that just means all those units are getting damage and armor, which means basically orcs, which are getting more stat boosts than they already would be getting. Trolls, you can see, are also affected by the darkness. Mumakil, I can't quite tell if it's been affected by the darkness, but all those other men of the east have been. But it also affects your allies. So if you had like a Gondor on as an ally, they're getting 25% damage and armor. Your Angmar, they're getting it, and so on and so on and so on. Such an underestimated power, and there's only 2 factions that can actually get rid of it if they go for a bad power of their own. Number 24, the military camp. I previously didn't realise that these Rohirrim, these special Rohirrim, also get the Sergeant of Rohan that other units get. But this Sergeant is very different in the fact that it gives all nearby allies 20% damage and armour, which is insane. And you can get this just by getting these free upgrades, and then all those Rohirrim you're making have forged blades, heavy armour. I don't think they get shields. They do not get shields, so keep that in mind. But they can also get banner carriers and fire arrows. So they can switch between spear and bow and just deal massive damage to even pikemen with very little to worry about. Each of their generals has 800 health at tier 2. Well, they were here at 500 health each. Oh, they just say have a horseman shield. There you go. There you go. I've been proven wrong. And this can be summoned in any location, but you can only have one of them up at a time. But to be fair, if your opponent sees these Rohirrim, which they won't be able to notice without paying like really good attention to, they won't notice this building exists without good vision powers. And if they can't get rid of it, you're just getting Rohirrim fully upgraded for free. 23, the Stronghold of the Iron Crown, which I think is actually still too powerful for its own good. It gives so many things in its entirety. It gives you firstly, choose a citadel for a camp or castle. It gets this giant tower on top of it. All your buildings become level 3 if they're not already. So if you're having a struggling defensive game and you finally managed to hit this power but not get any like settlements for tributes, then you've now got a way of just not having to worry about the tributes. You can make your base invulnerable for 30 seconds. You can summon one of the strongest cavalry units in the game with some insane abilities which get upgraded depending on the form of the Witch King you take with his favour. And then Sortie, which gives that unit and any other unit inside your base for a time more damage and movement speed. Probably the biggest movement speed buff in the game, 50%. Especially when it works also with cavalry. And then finally, the power that used to be part of the Witch King's kit is now a part of the Citadel, so you don't even have to be standing next to a hero to suddenly just say, okay, hello Drauglin, get this upgrade. And now Drauglin is a big wolf instead of just a wolf man. And chaos can ensue. Such a versatile power that always has something that your opponent has to worry about. And before I even forget about this, you also can you get the House of Lamentation, which is a poison AoE effect right in front of the gate. So if you can just keep getting rid of battering rams and AI keep walking into your gate, then they're not going to live. They're just going to die instantly. So much versatility in one power. It's a shame that it only belongs to Angmar, actually. Because this kind of power, with any other faction, would also just be ridiculously strong. Number 22, the Highborn Warhorses. I feel like this power is actually slept on by... I don't know by who, but I feel like it's just slept on. You just get all your cavalry. If you get banner carriers, they just become so much more powerful with such little need to worry about it. And it doesn't even just boost your units. You can get more resources from your stables, and your cavalry discounts discount your heroic unit, which is an amazing cavalry unit. So you can just get that even easier. And by the way, the cavalry discount is from the stud farm, not the flour mills or the Rohan farm, for those that didn't know. And yeah, just getting level 2 with your units is not hard. And then suddenly you've got ways to make your units so powerful that not a lot can take them down. And look at this unit now. When we last looked at them, they had 400 less health, and the general only had 200. Only has 200 more health. So you can tell that the value from those warhorses makes this unit almost. All this entire unit has more health than Theoden at level 10. That is insane. Number 21, Miravor. Such a simple power that has existed since the dawn of time in Battle for Middle-earth. And it is still, in my opinion, one of the best powers in the game. Large enough AoE that it actually matters. You don't have to have all your units clumped up in one place. And not only that, this power has an interaction with a upgrade. Miravor now replenishes 50% health instead of like 25% health and replenishing troops. That is crazy good for Enlargers in particular. But the main thing about this is the fact that it has an interaction with something else outside of itself. A power now has a way of getting an upgrade. And the fact that this exists, I want this to exist on so many other basic powers. Like rebuild, Gondorian Gondorian architecture even. Get Numenor stonework, so when you get it, you then get like armor on your building for a bit of time, showing that it has an upgrade. Just something like that for all kind of vanilla powers to give them something back. Because just something so simple as making an interaction like this turns a power that is a tier 1 power that is already amazing into a tier 1 power that can perform above its pay grade. And the fact that it exists, I want that to exist for every faction. Just period. Every faction should have this kind of interaction with powers and upgrades. Number 20, the Drums in the Mountain. Another really simple power that has a simple application, but the fact it exists, and look at that range that it actually afflicts with its leadership of 30% bonus speed to anything in that aura, is crazy to me. Yes, it is a building that can be destroyed. Yes, it is very easy to destroy. But the thing is that just the fact that this can exist, and it's a tier 1 power, and a lot of people will not even want to focus this because they'll be getting swarmed by goblins constantly. It is a perfect tool to distract an enemy while something much more important is going on. For example, getting your army out to safety, getting an army into battle, getting so much value from just a simple speed boost. It's so underestimated. That's why I put Veil of Mist so high up as well, because speed is so pivotal in this game. I don't think people understand that. Speed can make a difference, and which is why cavalry is so good, and why pikemen were made to counter them. Number 19, the Orc Overseers. Another slightly underestimated power because of the fact that it is just a single entity that can die quite easily, but it's a tier 1 power. Having 6 of them gives Sauron a level for free, and you can get this power back quicker thanks to one of your resource buildings, which is what I normally always do. And as you can see here, you can boost your basic Mordor Orcs by having them deal an extra 50% damage and gain 50% armor. The damage is the main thing about this, but the armor is also very valuable. Dogaldor Orcs get less damage but the same amount of armor. Morgul Orcs get the same amount of attack but less armor. And Killfungal Orcs have the same treatment. And that means the Killfungal Halberdiers, which do split damage, which, even though it is split damage, that 50% damage extra turns about 240 damage to about 360 damage of Slash and Specialist. So anything that's weak to both Slash and Specialist is taking massive damage. But also, depending on the unit you equip it to, you get a new thing called Crack the Whip. So, for example, basic Orcs deal bonus damage to pikemen, which just means they have more slash damage against pikemen, and but have less armor. That normally doesn't matter. That's actually just giving them the same stat boost as Morgul Orcs, but Morgul Orcs also get the same thing. Pikemen get a bonus against cavalry, but lose armor, and I believe archers deal just shoot faster, but also have less armor. So they're just constantly giving you these different ways of buffing your troops. And the fact that this is not classified as a leadership means that abilities like Freezing Rain will not remove this a bonus. This is a bonus. not a leadership. So nothing is getting rid of that as soon as the Overseer enters that unit. Yeah, it's a unit of orcs. So what? You can make millions more of them. But the Overseers can just keep coming back as well. There is no end to them. Number 18, the Protection of the Bruinen. A power that I think has more value than most defensive powers in the game. Because unlike an ability like Rebuild, which just repairs a building, or an ability like Barragon's, which makes buildings around him invulnerable for a bit, this not only makes a building invulnerable, but it also summons a Flood. Which, by the way, does more damage than Downfall of Andor, can kill the Army of the Dead, for those that aren't sure about its damage capabilities. I'm not sure about damage to the Balrog, but I'm fairly certain that doesn't matter as much when you're also just making the building invulnerable. When considering it is a perfect curve into a summon a building ability to get Protection of the Bruinen, you can, for example, oh no, the Army of the Dead has been summoned. Play Journey to Vaalnor, play Protection of the Bruinen. That Army of the Dead, that tier 4 power that can normally destroy nearly anything in the game, gone just like that. And that works on so many other things, and not just things that will die straight away in one hit. If anything survives, it takes a massive speed penalty, because even though it doesn't mention it, it does give a big speed debuff. And of course, a 1 minute invulnerability means that building is just going to be alive. If you use it on an outpost, that outpost isn't getting fully destroyed. If it's on a tower, you can keep poking down trolls, for example. You can stop siege from attacking that one building like mountain giants, and they're forced to move to somewhere else, because invulnerability is not the same as like the water moat of the lore masters for Imladris. It is total damage negation, cannot be targeted. Anything that was targeting it loses its target, so it will stop in place if an enemy is not paying attention, and you're forced to attack something else instead for a whole minute, or walk away. Walking away is probably the best thing you can do, because that way the player is getting less value out of using the Protection of the Bruinen. But then again, the power's done exactly what it needs to do. At number 17, Scavenger. Killing anything and getting money for free is stupidly powerful, especially with a faction that can summon dragons, which are all very expensive, can build anywhere on the map with these special camps, of special tunnels, which are very expensive once you've built the first two, 4,000 for everyone over the first two, and just so many other things, etc, etc, blah blah blah. We all know why this power is good. It's existed since the dawn of BFME 1. We know what it can do, and just making money from killing anything, including heroes, buildings, powers, a list goes on. You kill it, you make money from it. If you need any more explanation as to why this power is amazing, I would recommend using it yourself and seeing the value you will generate. Number 16, the Refuge in the Woods. Target any tree that you own, a Malon tree or the Blessed trees, the Heart trees, and then you've made yourself a well outside of your base. Which, by the way, if you can't also tell, these units are level 1, they should not be regenerating on their own. Next to the Refuge of the Woods, they are regenerating on their own. So get this straight away, and you can just build a old-timey well from the good old days of BFME and Edain before they changed the well system. Incredibly powerful and versatile. Use this as a way to heal yourself after a big battle, and a lot of units are very low on entities. Use this as a pushing tool to force an enemy into their base so they cannot get out, because you've constantly got healing to keep fighting on the front lines. Or use it as a buffer for an ally. Summon the tree. Give the tree the healing aura, and now your allies can also benefit from this. The list does not go on, but yeah, just use this in any capacity is already bringing back some things that they removed from other factions because of how powerful it is and how game-changing and game-twisting it can be, just having that healing. Some factions like Imladris will get off on this stuff because they have Mirrorvore, which requires them to actively regenerate their entities. This just gives it to them for free. At number 15, we have the Army of the Dead, or as it's now called in Edain, an Oath Fulfilled, summoning the Army of the Dead. Only difference is, compared to the original Army of the Dead, is that it summons some cavalry and the King of the Dead. But other than that, it is the same Army of the Dead that has always existed in Battle for Middle-earth. Another original power that will always exist, no matter what you do. It is always a power that will terrify anyone that sees its existence, with several smaller entities that could just go off and do whatever they want in any direction. And just does constant damage. They are immune to most physical types of damage, can only be damaged by magic, so very few entities in the game can actually damage them. And yeah, that's why they're still just one of the greatest powers in the game in general. If you need again, kind of similar to last power, if you need explaining how this power is good, use it yourself or have it used against you and try and counter it. I mean, a lot of factions actually have counters to the Army of the Dead. Imladris has protection of the Bruinen. Gondor themselves have the Army of the Dead, and Gandalf. Isengard has Saruman, but Saruman doesn't always do good against it. You need the ring to be at his best potential against the Army of the Dead. So even though factions have counters to this power, they still just will not be able to deal with it at every scenario. Wait till they've exhausted all their resources and they're at the crucial step. Just march in with this army, suddenly coming out of nowhere, and just watch the bodies drop. Number 14, Last Stand. The Dwarf Middle Power. And oh boy, is it a good one. 300% armor is insane. It is insane. It is 6 times better. Not 6 times, it's way better. It's way better than the basic Rallying Call, comparing its damage to the armor you gain. Just think about that. 25% attack on a tier 1 power. The middle power is 300% armor. That is, if my brain is working, 12 times better. 12 times better! And not just that, it makes them immune to knockback effects. So Breeze of Monway, Protection of the Bruinen, all those powers that can blow people away to try and stop them. Nope, the dwarves have their foot set on the ground. They are not getting moved. And any cavalry that comes near them and touches them are not going to be able to do much against them, even if they have no pikes. They're going to be sat in a clump of sweaty dwarves, fully armed and filthy, ready to take on any foe. And it's not just dwarves, it's any unit, allied units, all units in a clump just suddenly gain this massive armor boost, taking such reduced damage that even an effect like the Balrog entering the battlefield would not feel as terrifying. And you can typically run away from it as well, because this used to give I believe it used to give a speed debuff. That is no longer the case. You can still move at full speed with this power in action. And with Ered Luin in particular, you can see we're just racing across the map with this ability. It is an offensive tool, it's a defensive tool. Use it in any situation and you'll always get value out of it. Just know when to get the best value out of it at the most pivotal moments. Number 13, the Last Alliance. Get 3 basic Arnor troops. Get 3 basic, which in this case is elite, elf troops. And get 4 heroes, which each have a passive and active ability. But the main hero here, the main focus is Gil-galad, with Aeglos, the Lance of the Filament. Did I say that right? The Firmament is a AoE air blast attack which does insane magic damage. It is about the same strength as Saruman the Cursed level 10 ability. And don't forget that this is Imladris. Elrond exists. Elrond has restoration, refresh abilities. You can do this twice while this ability is active. And it's insane, the damage it can deal. Or just Gil-galad on his own. Not forgetting of this entire army, which is also buffing their own troops, but also making all things so he can attack gates, so gates aren't protected. Enemy buildings in a large radius have less armor, so they're getting destroyed faster. Does disable enemy buildings for 5 seconds of each strike. Just crazy levels of value from a tier 4 power. They can be summoned anywhere, in any moment. Can be used for so many different things, but I typically use it, as I believe that the Edain team wanted it to be used, to siege an enemy base down from the get-go. You should probably have the enemy gate down before you actually use this power. Eon's ability is still not really that worth it. If you have a scenario where you've not already taken down the gate, by the time you've taken down the gate, the power will already have run out of time and it will be wasted. But to be fair, you can also use Gil-galad to destroy the gate with Aeglos. Again, Gil-galad is the key feature of that power, and I'm so glad they changed him to have that ability, because it made this power, in my opinion, one of the lower tier powers to one of the higher tier powers just with that power change alone. Number 12, the Queen of Twilight. Galadriel's darker form, when she takes the ring, has been made into a power. And if you're ever in danger of just getting surrounded by enemies, this power can be a lifesaver. Her attacks deal massive damage in the AoE around her, and she can deal massive damage to buildings with lightning. Her abilities completely change, have fresh cooldowns, because they're all brand new. And each of them has their own way of just destroying the enemy. The higher level you get, the more of them you gain. And just stopping enemies from dealing damage, causing a massive damage dealing effect to enemy units, being able to destroy buildings, and even knock enemies down with a mini earthquake effect. And then just saying, no, you're now fighting each other, and you all are weaker, just on top of her attacks, is really good. Not as good as her other form, I'll admit, but if you do choose her other form instead of this, you get the Tornado, which is also a very valuable tool, because if anyone has played with BFME 2's Galadriel, the Ring Hero Galadriel,
why the halfling?
You'll know that that Tornado can do massive damage, and it lasts for just as long. At number 11, we have the Lady of Light, which is Galadriel's more divine form, and if you choose to use this ability while you already have the Queen of Twilight active, or you have the One Ring, you summon Vingalot, the sacred ship that Eärendil sailed into and Calagon the Black with a Silmaril and destroyed him. So just think about that and its potential for power. It is really good, really, really good power. But also just buffing Galadriel's abilities, and also making it so that her attacks shed light and give your units just more damage, vision range, speed, and damage apparently, is a big boon just for using a tier 3 power on your already amazing hero. So valuable. These two powers in consorts are so valuable, but they're not the best of Lothlorien's powers. The best is yet to come, but not yet. For number 10, we have Durin's Bane. Known by what I call the strongest monster in the game, definitely keeps that reputation strong, and is very much still its vanilla strength, which, for those that don't know, is insane. Apparently, there's an Easter egg where if you use Lightning Sword with Gandalf against the Barrage, it one-shots him. Unfortunately, it's very hard to show this, but ignoring that fact, you still have an ignition for bonus 200% damage, the Flame Breath, which can destroy anything it touches, his wings to reposition into any location you want, although it does seem to have a limited range. Very limited range. Oh, what the... Okay. Oh, okay, it was... But yeah, you can see that everything just got destroyed instantly. Buildings, heroes, monsters, infantry stand no chance. And his wings, if I'm not mistaken, can take him as far as you are able to. Yep, right there. So reposition, use that Flame Breath in a very nasty predicament. Doesn't last very long, but he doesn't need to. He has literally next to no counters. So few entities are actually able to kill him that it is insane how little counters he has. Compare him to Army of the Dead, the Balrog is a league above him, but still, there are 9 more powers to talk about that I think are greater than Durin's Bane. And we'll be going into each of them in more depth, because I think these 9 powers shape this game, this mod, and make it a completely new experience. And having these powers makes the mod so much more fun than if they didn't exist. Starting the S ranks at number 9, we have the Mirror's Knowledge. Such a simple power, but has such massive advantages over nearly every other power in this game. Reveal the entire map. No Nothing, no enemy, no ally is going to be able to hide anything from you with this power. You see everything at all times. No random sneak attacks from an enemy. No not knowing what the enemy is going to bring at your face, or when, or how much, or when units getting upgraded. You see everything. Nothing is hidden from you. Permanently. Passive ability, just showing the entire map. But not only that, reduce the cooldown of all your spellbook powers by 25%. Lady of Light comes back faster. Queen of Twilight comes back faster. In fact, Lady of Light you can pretty much have on permanently if you have this power. You can use your speed boost, slow down your enemies, have that healing. Arrows Volley. Radagast comes back quicker. Tariel. Vengeance of the Horns. And even summoning more trees just keeps coming back quicker and quicker and quicker to react to your opponents doing whatever the hell they want. You can now summon Vengeance of the Horns has a way of being used anywhere without needing to worry so much about map constrictions. So much value for one power, and it doesn't just reveal it for you. I'm fairly certain allies will be able to see this as well. I may be wrong on that, don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly certain any vision that you have, your allies have as well. At number 8, Rohan Answers. Comparing with this to the Gondor summon that I classified as a C tier power, I'm calling this an S tier power. Why? Because Rohirrim are by far a much greater value unit to get. Not only that, you're getting way more heroes that all have special abilities, and Theoden has Glorious Charge. Gaul Cavalry takes only 25% of normal damage. For all of this, and unlike the Army of Gondor, which has to be kept at a safe distance from where you're starting at because of the fact that the banner can be destroyed, this can just be put anywhere, be kept safe, and then can still just ride into battle and still have most of its timer left. Activate Glorious Charge, throw out the spear, throw out I Am No Man to just have a level 10 ability to kill an enemy hero. Also have Merry. You also get Grimbold and Elfhelm, but they don't get any of their abilities. They just make allies fearless. And then just just so much value. And we have to hear the soundbite. Look at that glow, beautiful. Now that entire unit, this entire army you've just summoned, that can move from corner to corner of the map in seconds, now can just take next to no damage and destroy anything it wants. There is so little that can actually counter this power. Compared to Arm of the Dead, this power will slap so much harder because of how long it lasts. And look at that, even on its own, it's doing that. Oh yeah, let's not forget the fact that Éomer has Scavenger. Have we talked about how powerful Scavenger was? We've now got Scavenger on a power for Gondor. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about that very, 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 very crucial thing that is stupidly powerful to add on to this. Adding the cherry on top of this cake is just this fact you get Scavenger. It's so beautiful, this power. I can't give it enough good praise. It just works. Nothing can really fight against it. You're forced to accept whatever will happen. Only a massive AoE killing effect can get rid of this. And even then, this can just walk away from it without any trouble because of the speed. Speed is too good. Number 7, the Banner of the Red Eye. Did you know this used to be a tier 1 power? But then they nerfed it to a tier 3 power because they knew straight away this power is stupidly good. It is so good. And they even decided, you know what, this might be a bit too much of a nerf. Let's make it so we're recovering troops at the same time. It's not just one troop, regenerate 2 fallen members. They've buffed it. They buffed the bloody thing. Damn you all. This is a beautiful power. If you're not getting this power as Mordor, you're not optimally using your infantry to the best of their ability. Getting 3 level 2 upgrades for all of your troops, all orcs on the map getting banner carriers. If you've got, for example, 4 Mordor factions all together, and one of them gets this power, all their units are getting this. And again, this also regenerates for every single unit. It's so so good. If you're missing out on this power, use it. Use it a whole bunch. You will never feel the same again about Mordor. You will love this faction just for having such a simple power as one of your best tools in your kit to keep alive, keep fighting, and do it better. At number 6, we have the Dwarven Runes. The Rune of Inviolability, give a building 50% extra armor. The Rune of Inspiration, have a heroic statue effect on any building. The Rune of Power, a certain building every second recovers 100 hit points. The Rune of Productivity, either train troops faster or produce 30% more resources. I mean, do I need to say anything else about them? These runes were also... There's also a power that actually got nerfed. There used to be a tier 2 power that only cost 2 power points for all 4 runes. Then they changed it so you can now pay for the main base, and you can buy any of the 4 runes separately for 1 power point each. And if you have all of this, you can then get your tier 4 power, the Citadel. Just so much value out of each of these. You don't have to put all of them onto one thing like I've done with this tower, for example, just to show off the runes. You can put the Rune of Inviolability on a tower so it has extra armor. Put a Rune of Inspiration on a heroic statue so it has even more value of damage and armor for all your troops. Just insane value. Rune of Power can make a building that would normally be close to death just keep coming back faster, so that you want pesky unit of orcs isn't destroying your building anymore, it is getting destroyed instead. Or if it's getting shot by archers, those archers are getting no value and they're being sat there doing nothing for the rest of the game. Or Rune of Productivity, which is my personal favourite. I'm still not sure about its interaction with Dale on Lake Town, whether or not it gives extra recruitment speed or extra resources, but one day I will figure it out. But either way, 30% bonus speed is almost as powerful as Erister's ability with Imladris. But this is with the dwarves we're talking about. They have much easier access to their building recruitment speed increases because all they need to do is spend some money, and then they get resource upgrades as well. So Rune of Productivity is, on top of all of these, amazing. All these powers are really, really good. Should never be looked at and then forgotten about. They should always be looked at and given the praise they deserve. Number 5, Assistance in Times of Need. If you asked me, back when Edain Mod first came out, if this power was good, I would say no, never get this power. If you asked me this 3 years ago, if this power was good and if I should get it, I would say no, signal fires are still terrible and this power is still bad. If you would ask me this a year ago, when this power got re-updated, the signal fire got changed so that it now lets you choose what units you want to recruit, and now this power, instead of recruiting more of them, gives them full upgrades, heavy armor, forged blades and fire arrows. Would you, and if you asked me this question, I would say you should get this first. You should get this as your first power as soon as possible, because if you're not, you are neglecting one of the most busted powers in the game that have been reworked over the many years of Edain Mod's life cycle to just make troops for free over time that have full upgrades is one of the most powerful ways to take a game. And the fact that you can use Beornings to have a healing aura around and then make these troops come out even faster, because these Errand Riders regenerate even faster. So you can keep making these troops for free at a ridiculously fast pace for basically nothing other than the base cost of the signal fire, and to protect the signal fire is not that hard. And then you've got these troops that have all these bonus effects, which I love these units, by the way. All 4 of these units are so fun to use in their own way. And yeah, if you overlook this power, you overlook these units, then you're probably like me, who for a long time did not like this power or this building. Reevaluate the situation with this power and this building. It will change everything. This is one of the reasons why Gondor is the number 1 easiest to play and the most powerful in my ranking videos. There is a big reason, and the main reason for that is the signal fire now. It used to be so many other things, but now it's the signal fires. At number 4, we have the Elven Wood. No one would have thought the power that from Battlefield 1 used to just be change the terrain to be green and give a bonus would become this good. The Heart Tree is one of the most terrifying things to look at. And it's a tree. If you see this, you have no idea what's going on around because it has so many different things. Firstly, allies nearby are cloaked, which means they cannot be seen. And this tree will continue to grow over time to get more buffs. Firstly, it'll make it so the Heart Tree will periodically have a fear aura, which is the same as the lanterns, the same as the Gate Watchers for Mordor, same as the Drummer Troll. It's a AoE, make every enemy's run away effect. Then later on in full bloom, the Heart Tree is fully blossomed. Ambush now recharges 75% faster when near the Heart Tree. Which again, if you're not sure, it's Ambush of the Wood Elves. So I'm just walking into this tree. We now get this for free. Not because we're in trees, but because this tree just gives us cloaked. And now we have this. And look at that. The cooldown was already 75% recharged. So we can use this again almost as soon as the power runs out. We just have 50% damage for free from a middle tier power. And let's not also neglect the fact that you can also cast Refuge of the Woods on this power, this Elven Wood. So now it's a healing tree. You can also summon Tariel on this power. So now it's a well-defended tree. You just have so much that works in consort with this one power. This is the best middle power in the game, by the way, in my opinion. It is also the cheapest middle power in the game. I'm not calling it the best because it's cheap. I think it's one of the best because it has so much utility and it can unlock so many things in your kit on its own that if other factions had this power, I think they'd be just as powerful. Beornings, with his buffs, would make this insane. There's some other heroes I can't think of right now by name, but you just have so many valuable things that can work with this one tree. And again, it's a tree. It can be destroyed, yes. It can be targeted. But then again, this power does not take long to come back. And thanks to the Mirror's knowledge, it does not take long at all to keep coming back. And again, you can plant this tree in an ally's base, place Refuge of the Woods on that tree, and you've made a healing fountain for your ally. That is busted. I'm just going to say it right now. That is a busted ability you can use right there. And you should. Every chance you get. At number 3, we have Glory to the King. The Glorious King. A ability very similar to Gandalf and Saruman's ability, which just gives him more stats. But not just that. Way more than that. For those that don't know Theoden very well in the Edain mod, he starts off as a weak, crippled man that still has Grima following him around, with some very positive but negative inflicting abilities, like turning peasants into traitors that will eventually disappear, make your buildings generate more resources but have less armor, run away from combat, but you can't fight in the process. In this form, Theoden can mount his horse. The more he levels up, his leadership goes from 50% damage and armor to 25%. Heroes can now also gain this benefit. And the range of the leadership is doubled. So to have a quick view of this, the 300s have currently got the leadership effects. They no longer have the leadership effects. But look how far Theoden can be for the leadership to persist on the 300s. I might have. This will be a day to remember. But yeah, there's still a massive leadership range. Yeah, you can see there. It's come back again. That yellow glow. He's got the leadership again from Theoden. So when you go to right here, you can see it comes. As it goes away, it goes away. You then can give your units triple their normal experience for a short time. So if you want those level 5 units with the insane damage and health, then use this power. You can get it. Then you also get the Herald of the King, which takes Theoden's leadership and gives it even more range, because it now has a new entity to use. So you can have these on foot if you have them on foot, or mounted if you have them mounted. And again, you can see it buffs the 300s at the same time as it's buffing other troops. And of course, one of the best abilities in the game, Glorious Charge.
And tonight is for you.
All cavalry and Theoden himself gain the ability to reduce all damage they take by only taking 25% of all damage. So strong. You take a hero that is worth 800 when you first recruit him as the Corrupted, and then you get a hero that is worth 3,000 by just getting your middle tier power. Like, this is the power I always go for second. I get the draft power first, and then I always rush this power, because having Theoden on the field turns Rohan from a decent aggressive powerhouse to one of the most aggressive, underestimated powerhouses this game has ever seen. It takes Rohan and it pumps them up to 11. It is crazy how much this one power, just having your faction leader enter the battlefield at his best. And even if he only starts at level 1, if you find the ring, you can get him straight away to level 10, and then you can use Glorious Charge. And then the whole world will know your name, the Glorious King. And number 2, we have the Beasts of Ered Mithrin. When I first saw this power, I thought I was getting baited, because I thought, okay, we're just getting some dragons. This is so much more. Firstly, you get the Fire Drakes, which is what I thought this power was only going to give. Which are, if you don't know, the same dragons you get from Liz, which if you level them up, they get even bigger and eventually can also fly. You're also getting this dragon called the Cold Drake, which can't breathe fire like its currently flightless cousins, but they can also roar to make enemies around them run away in fear. Not only that, they also have protection, because every Fire Drake lair needs some protection of some kind, and the higher level it gets, the more you get protection. And all drakes nearby are healed. So not only are you having ways of healing these dragons so they don't die, they have massive health pools at level 10, as you can see, a total of 12,000 health. But let's take it one step further. Every single one of these structures has a other ability called Dragon Strike. Let's just use one of them. Let's just see what happens.
Is that the enemy?
You can see we have the BFME2 Vanilla Original Dragon Strike coming out from your building, which can already summon dragons, 3 of each in total, as you can see. I only can make 3 of each. And as you can see, that has burnt that building to the ground. And there's barely anything left. But wait, there's more. That was one. You see how this one doesn't have a cooldown? Same as the other one. That's because each of these has a individual cooldown. I used this one before I did this. I completely forgot about it. But as you can see, I can now use another Dragon Strike. Oh, and look. Another Dragon Strike. That's the other Dragon Strike I did, by the way. But yeah, just Dragon Strikes from everywhere. And there you go. They're gone again. And as you can see, I've not just got 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 Fire Drake lairs. You can have an unlimited number. There is no limit. If there is no limit, that means that as long as the game goes on, you are just going to win. Simple as that. The second you get this power, the enemy should be on a ticker. They're going to slowly die if they do not remove these lairs. And it's not going to be easy to remove either. Only heroes are really good against dragons because of their high stats and just high damage. Only dragons can really take that damage and deal damage back at the same time. I love this power. The fact this power exists makes me want to play in the Misty Mountains more and more and more and get to that point. Because as much as I love the early game goblins, having the dragons is the real prize, the real gem, the diamond in the rough. And here we come for number 1. There's going to be many people that expected this. There's going to be many people who never thought I'd rank a power like this so highly. But let's get into all of it now. The power of past ages. Such a simple power. Why is it such a amazing power that you would rank it so highly? Well, I rank Glorious King so highly, so let me tell you about why I think having Sauron turn into a elf-looking creature called Gorfauer is so good. So, Power of Past Ages doesn't give you a lot of information as to what happens. But as you can see, we now have 7,000 health and do a lot of hero damage, and we are very good at killing heroes. We now get the Power Blade of Destinies, more damage, and we can sometimes release little vortexes. We still have the influence of Sauron, so we're not losing that as we get this upgrade. We have a Pillar of Fire, which burns anything in the vicinity, very similar to that of the Tornado of Galadriel. But unlike on a power restricted timer, this is just on Gorfauer's timer. And then we also have Tolin Gorhoff. You summon a whole goddamn fortress as a level 10 power, which can summon werewolves, which are not like anywhere near close to the werewolves of the Angmarim. These werewolves are something else entirely. You can also reduce the cost of your heroes by 20%, which if you hadn't noticed, we have a lot of heroes. I haven't even got all of them out. These are just some of the heroes I've got out right now. We then also can just make it so they take less melee damage, and then also burn anything around it to further protect it. And although I didn't really show it off well, you can, this thing also, as you can kind of see with that little storm there, will constantly spawn lightning to attack enemies around it. You can also summon bats to protect it as well. But, as I've already mentioned in the past with what Sauron can do, he can also turn into a bunch of vampire bats. So if you're against, for example, goblins that have very low archer supremacy, turn into a bunch of bats and just slowly drain the life out of those goblins for free, while Sauron is taking no damage. Or if you're against a faction that has a lot of archers, get the Lord of Werewolves to then trample them and also boost the werewolves from Tolin Gorhoff to incredible heights. Or if you're a kind of person that wants to end the game like a bastard, you can get Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and with that power you can then unleash hell by making him invulnerable. He can't attack, but you can't attack him, and he will just destroy any chance you have of victory. Let's just show off Anatar, because I want to read his abilities in full. Units in the round gain experience twice as fast reduce their armor. And this just allows nearby units, not just allies, all nearby units. So put him right next to the enemy army. They're going to get experience faster, but they're going to die faster. Spoiled Suggestions. They fight for Anatar for the next 30 seconds. Enemy units in the area become dazzled by Anatar. Receive damage and armor for 60 seconds, but also fight for me. Armistice. All units and heroes on the entire map cannot attack for 30 seconds. During this time, enemy resource structures produce 25% more resources. That's just a way of saying, so yeah, we're now just going to begin just doing all this nonsense. And then finally, the Hour of Extinction. He sheds his mask and begins the siege on the enemy fortress. All gates in a wide radius are opened, and catapults and battle towers on enemy walls are temporarily inoperative. During this time, enemy recruitment structures train troops at double speed, so you can protect yourself faster. But all that protection you normally would have is gone. So, yes, this hero is insane, and that's just Anatar. As I mentioned before, the vampire bats are good at dealing damage from the skies, where you can't be touched if you don't have archers, and even then you can move away into safety. The Power of Past Ages is the most versatile power, is the most fun power in my opinion, because of the fact that it gives all of this, along with an extra level for Sauron. So if you had level 9, you've now got level 10 for getting the Power of Past Ages. It's so much value. It is so much fun bringing all of this out all of a sudden on your hero, which you need to have. You need to have Sauron. Similar to Theoden, this is the hero you need to have all the time. Sauron is too important to Mordor to not have, so why not make him stronger? You've now just made him stronger, and now he can do all of this nonsense, which you cannot stop unless you get rid of him. Which, by the way, if Sauron is to lose all his health points, he didn't have to re-recruit him. He becomes a shadow, and then you can get him back over time, and then use Power of Past Ages again. And then just have him back as this full strength hero, costing nothing, fully on the field again, just wreaking havoc everywhere he goes. And you can even use his first form abilities first before he comes back to do a little bit of chaos, and then bring him back at his full potential and just clean the board, clean the slate all over again. This is my favourite power. It will always be my favourite power. It has always been my favourite power, and I hope a lot of people feel the same about it. I hope you've all enjoyed this feature film. This is my longest video made. Will probably be my longest video made, period. I put so much effort into this video, and I hope it has shown that over all my years of playing this mod and playing this game, I hope all of my knowledge will help people that aren't quite sure what powers to choose, and I hope this has helped them. Hope you've all enjoyed, and see you all in the next one, which I don't know what will be because I need to take a break already. My throat is about to die. Bye everyone.